Hi everyone. So usually when I provide these responses, as I continue to make up my online portfolio using the website, I tend to provide a written review. But I have a BA as well as a master's in ed. So writing is kind of my forte, so to speak. And what ends up usually happening is I have quite a lengthy response, a written response. So I decide to just give myself and my reader a bit of a break and just provide a video response instead. So for the purposes of this activity, I chose to focus on Annie's case, more or less because her story just really jumped out at me. But I also really think that there are some similarities between both case studies that we were presented with. For instance, and as I'll mention later, both students seem like they would benefit from some peer collaboration in some sort of respect. I think that you do, as our one resource discussed, you do really have to be careful when you're partnering up students for this kind of exercise. But I think that in any case, it always provides the students not only with the opportunity to see behavior from the other students, from their peers, and model it, but it also gives them a chance to, if they've got any insight themselves, they kind of show their own expertise, and that really boosts up their confidence level, even if it's something that's not strictly academic related. It's always just a good opportunity. If they've got any interesting insight that they can provide, then there's that real boost of confidence that they have. Um, but going on with Annie's case study, first and foremost, one thing that really jumped out at me right away was the parents' willingness to participate in the development and planning of an IEP. We understand that Annie's mom has had a past experience with her other child having gone through the same thing. Being identified and having an IP developed for them. So that's something that's huge right there. Not only are you able to kind of then use the parents and their expertise on their own child, but their willingness to go along with this and participate in the support that you're working to provide with the student is just one of the best things that you can ask for with a situation like this. So that's a huge advantage right there. We all know as well that Annie is easily distracted and quite disorganized. So noting that she faces challenges with reading as well as math shouldn't really be too much of a surprise because they kind of go hand in hand sometimes. In a video from the Understood team, this is a resource that we got at the beginning of this module, Professor Daniel explains that the same genes associated with reading difficulties are also associated with math difficulties. So when a student struggles with reading and literacy skills, they're more likely to also struggle with math skills. So it shouldn't really be too much of a surprise there that she kind of faces challenges with both. And we can also use that knowledge to our advantage. So drawing from some of the reading support strategies, we can apply them to Annie's learning. This is stuff that we learned about in the last module that we're able to apply here for Annie's math learning. Taking, for instance, that Tomlinson, a resource that I've left at the end of this article, or in my description, I should say, explains that by differentiating the content of learning, such as presenting ideas or text through visual and auditory means rather than just a text-heavy medium, we're able to support students. So you're differentiating the content to support Annie, not through just her reading, but through her math learning as well. So any opportunity, I'll touch upon again in just a few minutes, so I'll discuss this in more length. Any opportunity that you have to give her work or present new ideas or information, or just have her do some exercises through those audio, visual, hands-on activities will just go a really far way. A resource provided from the same previous module, Stanberry and Swanson's article on effective reading interventions explains that the sequencing of work, breaking down complex ideas into simple steps is a great way to support students. This is something that I'm sure a lot of us already do. I already do it with my grade 6 7 and one of my grade 9 students. I have a grade 6 to 9 split class. It's just a bit of a different setup. But with those students from grade 6 to 9, I have students that are struggling with long division. And so what I've had them do is I just break down the steps of long division into there's 7 steps that I've broken it down into. So they'll spend a day, a couple days, or even a week just going over the first part of long division, just taking that divisor and thinking about what is the first thing that we do. So for example, how many times can we get 2 if the question is what is 93 divided by 2? How many times does 2 go into 9 without going over? We're just focusing on the first steps, and we'll do that for upwards of a week until they feel more comfortable with it. And then I'll go into the next step, and we'll just do exercises focusing on that next step. So just practicing, just practice as much as we can. And so with Annie, we can do the same thing, but with subtraction and addition. Take it step by step. I know that she struggles with numbers up to even 10, but if we're dealing with addition and we need to carry over the 1, just deal with the first part of addition and just have her carry over the 1 and then stop right there. Go on to the next question. What's 6 plus 7? The 3 goes below. We'll put the 1 there, and we'll go on to the next question. We're just working step by step and really scaffolding or putting into sequence. It's another strategy that we can look at implementing for Annie. We also know that she's really disorganized. So by knowing this will really help. And so for instance, when she's copying notes and lining up the numbers, it just doesn't happen. Numbers aren't lined up and her note-taking abilities aren't the greatest. So there's a few things that we can do here. Not only can we provide her with printed notes, but we can also provide Annie with maybe a pre-developed worksheet or note-taking sheet where she's just plugging in some of the information that she's learning. Even if you're just lining up the numbers for her, or lining up a chart for her to use, using grid paper even rather than lined paper will help her a lot. But also providing her with any visually organized resources. Hutchinson, an article that we have at the beginning of this module, as well as an author that's kind of been thrown in here and there throughout the whole course. He provides us with an idea that we can use the 1 to 100 charts. And within his article, he actually talks about an exercise or a series of exercises that we can implement from grades 1 to grades 5 using just this 1 to 100 chart. You can have something along the lines of leaving blank spaces for Annie to fill in, whether it's just put at random in this 1 to 100 chart, or if you are going over, something along the lines of, multiples, but not even bringing up the definition of multiples to her, just taking out that every other number, every even number, and she'll just get into that pattern of going 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And before I forget too, using this 1 to 100 chart, it's important that you do kind of check over how you're implementing it. Don't just put it at random. For instance, there's a couple of ways that Hutchinson mentioned that we can use this 1 to 100 chart, but one easy way that I'm sure we've all seen is just 1 to 10, and then 11 to 20, 21 to 30, and it just goes on, and it's very organized and very visually organized, which would help students such as Annie. So we also know that Annie likes to apparently boss around the students, but drawing from this module's LD online resource, I really believe that through the facilitation of peer collaboration, perhaps during an activity where there are various strategies to solve the question, giving them different strategies that they can use, perhaps during one of those types of activities will allow other students to model their behavior for Annie. And then as well, once again, as she gets more comfortable, I think it's really beneficial if there's any opportunity where she can say, hey, I've got this strategy, this solves it as well. If the student, really reaps that in, the student that she's working with really reaps that in, then that's all the better. But at the very least, she's saying, okay, look, there's different things that we can do. She's understanding that there's some strategies that maybe she just likes more or that work for her more or whatever it is. She's becoming she's regulating her own behavior and her own learning practices. And we also know, and I've touched upon this kind of briefly, that Annie fidgets and becomes easily distracted. This is also really important, and in math, a really accessible hurdle to overcome. Manipulatives. It's huge. This is easy. We can just give her, as best as we can, hands-on, visual, auditory, if we can, tactile practices that we can use. And then she's fidgeting with the work that she's doing right in front of her. In the Bates article, he points out that students that struggle with math can be supported through the use of multisensory math teaching methods. So again, visual, tactile, auditory, movement, anything that we can implement into there. And it'll just go a long way. Any visual hands-on material will just go a long way. I also have, and I'm not sure how well you can see this, I have this resource here. This is something that you can buy online. The entire package costs $1,000 to get, but talk about it with your school or anything like that if you're able to get to. And I know it seems like a lot, but it's a great resource. This is just grades 5 to 6. Every activity in here uses the color tiles, and so it leaves kind of a graph like this. Once again, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but on this graph, along the tops, it's different units within math. So if you're doing with area, you just follow the graph down, and there are different activities that you can use with color tiles and area. Multiplication, division, fractions, and the list just goes on and on. Reasoning, geometry, perimeter, ratios, all just for grades 5 and 6 using just the color tiles. There are the number blocks, base blocks, the geoboards, snap cubes, tanagrams. All of them have their own books from grades K to 5. And then after that, at around grades 7 and 8, it's just one book per kind of unit, and then you go through that yourself. So it switches up a little bit differently, but it's another great resource that allows the students to see, feel, touch their mathematical learning. So that is from, that resource is ETA Cuisenaire, but they have changed it to Hand to Mind is the resource. I've left it below. The super source, Hand to Mind. It's something great that you can just look into. Maybe your math library already has it. I haven't purchased one myself, but using some routing money, I'm actually going to. This, however, was available just through district, and I've just borrowed it for the year, and it's been a really wonderful resource. Any resource that I've mentioned during this quick video, I've left in my description. But if you have any questions or comments, just feel free to leave a response to my discussion. And those are just some of the ways that we can help out Annie. Helping students, especially students that are bogged down from note-taking and everything like that, in math, hands-on, manipulatives, it always goes a long way. So once again, just contact me if you have any comments or questions, and thank you so much.